You made it to the soft, quiet hour when thought feels heavier than sleep. I'm glad you're here. This is the Sleepy Thinker, where science speaks like a whisper, and questions don't need answers to be beautiful. You're lying still, but your mind is not. It paces, it revisits, it talks back. And maybe you've wondered, why does it always wait for nightfall? Why does your own voice get louder in the dark? You're not tired because the day was long. You're tired because your mind doesn't know how to rest. Not yet. Tonight, we'll explore that voice inside. What it's really saying. What it's really remembering. We'll drift through neuroscience, memory, and dream. We'll visit ancient traditions, forgotten philosophers, and soft science, all while staying slow, gentle, and just sleepy enough. Wherever you're watching from, whether you're wrapped in silence or city noise, feel free to share it in the comments. Tell me your time zone, or maybe what your mind whispers when the world goes quiet. I'll be there, reading. Now close your eyes. Let your thoughts come, not as enemies, but as echoes of something important. Let's begin, not with a theory, but with a question. Why does your mind talk back, just when you need it to be quiet? And what if it's trying to help you sleep? The house is quiet, the sky is folded, but your thoughts have just begun. The world stopped speaking, but something in you refused to follow. Your body rests, but your brain, it paces softly in circles. Why now? Why this hour? Why does your mind wait for the dark? It feels cruel sometimes to be so tired and so awake. But maybe it's not cruelty. Maybe it's memory trying to find its way back home. This voice in your head, this endless rehearsal, it's not noise, it's narration. The mind doesn't go silent just because the world does. It fills the quiet with unfinished stories. And this is no accident. There is a pattern, a system, a rhythm. It begins with something scientists call the default mode network, a name too boring for something so mysterious. It lights up when you stop trying, when you stop doing, when you finally allow yourself to drift. It's the resting state of the brain. But resting doesn't mean quiet. It means wandering. It links your memories, your regrets, your imagined futures. It activates when you're still, when you're walking alone, when you're staring at nothing, and especially when you're lying in bed, listening to your own mind echo. The default mode network lives in the deep folds of your brain. It lights up like stars when all else dims. It is where your self lives. Not the doing self, but the remembering one. It stitches together your story, replays your fears, rewrites what hurt, and it never gets the timing right. Because it waits for silence. And silence doesn't come until bedtime. You're not alone in this. Even emperors couldn't sleep through their minds. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in the soft ache of insomnia. He called it his inner citadel, not a prison, but a sanctuary built from thought. He didn't silence the voice. He gave it paper. He listened. And centuries later, Carl Jung heard it too, but called it something else. He called it the collective unconscious, a deep river beneath, awareness that speaks in dreams and symbols. He believed the mind was not just a memory, but them trying to resurface. He said, dreams, they aren't random noise. They're code, archetype, message. So when you lie awake and your mind won't stop circling, you are in ancient company. In Vedic philosophy, this is the monkey mind, jumping, swinging, flailing for attention. But the monks didn't hate it. They didn't fight it. They watched, like you watch the sea, knowing the waves are not enemies, just motion. In Buddhism, they say you don't control thoughts. You sit beside them, kindly. Let the mind chatter. Let it replay. You are not what you hear. You are the witness, the gentle observer, not the noise, but the noticing. And back in science, neuroscientists scanned resting brains and found more fire than stillness. They thought they'd get sleep, but saw symphonies. Networks are lighting up like memory cities. The mind doesn't pause. It reorganizes. It reshapes the narrative you live inside. Imagine your brain as a great silent librarian sorting books when the library closes. All day, you pile up experiences, conversations, glances, moments you didn't fully feel, and at night, the whisper begins. The sorting starts. This isn't overthinking. This is cleaning, processing, making sense. Even that strange memory from years ago that shows up uninvited has a reason. Even that fear you thought you forgot is looking for a place to rest. And when the world stops talking, your mind finally hears itself, loud and strange and sacred. Some call it a flaw, but maybe it's intelligence, a deeper kind. You're not broken. You're unfinished, still stitching the chapters of yourself. Your mind loops not because it's lost, but because it's looking for closure. This is what Jung knew. This is what Marcus felt. This is what you are living now. The 2nd century CE was filled with sleepless sages sitting beside the same silence you know. Some wrote, some meditated, some simply breathed through the storm. And all of them discovered that thought in the dark has its own kind of truth. You can't shut it off. Not really. You can only receive it differently. Your mind speaks now because it finally can, because you finally stopped running. Let it speak. Let it replay. Let it whisper its endless thread. You don't have to believe everything. You just have to listen gently, with curiosity, not fear. Maybe it's not anxiety. Maybe it's the nervous system trying to sort its signals. Maybe it's not regret. Maybe it's learning how to forgive yourself. Even that strange image you can't explain. Maybe it's a dream in rehearsal. Maybe you're not going crazy. Maybe you're just catching up with who you are becoming. Because stillness isn't silence. Stillness is sound in its truest form. It's the sound of memory breathing, the sound of emotion moving, the sound of yourself remembering itself. So next time your mind talks back when you lie in the dark, don't scold it. Let it speak its piece. Let it run its circuits. Let it close the loops. It's not your enemy. It's your echo, your helper, your internal night watch. And if that means you lie awake a little longer tonight, so be it. Sleep will come. But first, your thoughts will ask to be heard. They always have. Since the first firelight. Since the first dream. And tonight, they are. Asking again, are you still listening? Your eyes are closed. Your body is still. But the day isn't done with you yet. Not in your mind. Not in your memory. Not in the quiet spaces behind your eyes. Every unfinished moment has followed you here, tucked in beside your breath. The conversation you didn't finish. The look you couldn't explain. The feeling you tried not to feel. They return now, not to hurt you, but to be acknowledged. Because memory doesn't end when experience does. It lingers and waits for night to speak. Your brain is not just a recorder. It's a weaver, a storyteller, a therapist. And the moment you stop moving, it begins its stitching, its sorting, its search for resolution. This is not overthinking. It's memory consolidation. It's biology doing its quiet job. Your hippocampus is still wide awake, and it's replaying what matters. In REM sleep, your brain sorts emotional experiences into memory banks. It decides what to keep, what to let go, and what needs to be felt again. This is not cruelty. This is maintenance, like sweeping a sacred floor. But sometimes, the feelings are too big to be filed away quietly. And so they echo. They replay. They ask to be witnessed again. Sigmund Freud once said dreams are the disguised fulfillment of repressed desires. He thought they were hidden messages, whispers from beneath the surface, clothed in strange costumes. Then came Francis Crick, co-discoverer of DNA. He saw it differently. He said dreams were garbage disposal, a way for the brain to delete useless data. Two views. One saw dreams as truth. The other saw them as cleaning, but both agreed. Dreams and nighttime thoughts are not random. They are the byproduct of emotional digestion, the residue of your waking life trying to be processed. You relive moments not because you're weak, but because the brain is trying to reduce their weight. This is the science of emotional memory, of restoration through repetition. Even the flashbacks, even the recurring dreams, they're part of the healing algorithm. But this is not just neurons, it's narrative, it's myth, it's meaning, because memory is not digital, it's emotional. It breathes, it aches, it reshapes. In ancient Egypt, dreams were doors to gods, to warnings, to the future. People slept in temples, hoping for visions, messages from the beyond. In Aztec culture, dreams were journeys into other dimensions. The soul left the body, walked among ancestors, and returned wiser. Even now, your soul may not wander far, but your thoughts do. They walk the halls of the day you just lived, touching every unprocessed corner. They ask, did that moment matter? Did that hurt? Did that heal? And you may feel unrest, but it is sacred unrest. A sign that your inner life is alive. So many of us rush through our days without absorbing them. We feel something, then scroll it away. We break, then pretend we didn't. But the mind remembers. The body stores it. And the night becomes a mirror. A soft one. A deep one. A necessary one. Because silence is not emptiness. It is fullness unmasked. When all noise stops, your memories float to the top like lanterns rising on still water. Sometimes you'll dream it. Sometimes you'll just feel it, a mood, a tightness, a flicker. This is emotional residue, the body remembering what the mind tried to forget. Even in modern psychology, we see that dreams improve mental health. That nighttime reflection reduces anxiety. The brain is a quiet healer, but it speaks in echo, not command. It needs space to rearrange. So when your thoughts return at night, ask yourself, what am I trying not to feel? Often the answer is simple, but powerful. It was never about fixing it, just witnessing it, letting it exist, letting it breathe, because healing doesn't need action. It needs awareness and time. And nighttime is when your mind finally has time to listen inward. You are not being haunted. You are being metabolized, processed gently by memory and meaning, like your brain is humming a lullaby made of images, scenes, fleeting feelings. This is the echo of the day, the heart's aftersound, the mind's gentle postscript. And if you resist it, it will grow louder. Not to punish, but to complete. You are not broken for thinking too much at night. You are breaking open into someone who notices, who listens, who honors what lingers because the past doesn't want to control you. It just wants to be seen before it can sleep. So let it. Let it rise. Let it echo and pass. And know this: every mind echoes at night. Even the silent ones, even the wise ones, even the ones that look peaceful on the outside. They too rehearse their memories. They too listen for the soft knock of truth. And tonight, your truth is speaking. Not as noise, but as say necessity. Let it finish. Let it whisper. Let it go. Then rest. Not because everything is solved, but because everything has been heard. And if this chapter let you breathe a little softer, maybe share it with someone still awake, someone whose memories are asking to be held. Just like yours were. You lie down, and everything stops except you. You think you're still. But stillness, like silence, is an illusion. You're not frozen. You're flowing. Quiet doesn't mean empty. The breath still moves. The blood still turns. The mind still hums beneath the surface. Even in your most restful state, you are never truly still, only softly active. What we call sleep isn't absence, it's orchestration, an invisible symphony of cycles, pulses, and sacred repairs. The body may rest, but the mind begins to cleanse. You don't feel it, but your brain is washing itself. This is the glymphatic system, a slow, cerebral tide that flows only when you sleep. It flushes waste from your neurons, clears debris, like a gentle night janitor in your skull. By day, your brain works. By night, it wipes the chalkboard clean. This is why sleep matters. Not just for dreams, but for detox. When sleep is disrupted, the brain clogs. It holds on to what should be cleared. And what remains? Fog. Forgetfulness. A mind too full to breathe. Your circadian rhythm is the ancient clock tied to light and darkness. Every cell in your body has a rhythm, and it sings with the sun. By day, your cortisol rises, preparing you to engage, protect, and perform. By night, your melatonin rises, inviting you inward. But this isn't shut down. It's a transformation, a shift from outer to inner repair. You may lie still, but hormones move. Fluids flow. Neurons reconnect. Leonardo da Vinci didn't believe in 8-hour nights. He broke time into fragments. He napped in intervals. Brief rests throughout the day to keep his energy rotating like gears. His polyphasic sleep was strange, but brilliant. He believed the mind was more alive in short, frequent bursts, and perhaps he was right, because creativity thrives in the half-wake state. On the other side of genius was Nikola Tesla, whose insomnia felt like a storm. He could not rest, not fully. His thoughts refused stillness. He wandered between waking and dreaming, often collapsing into micro-naps after days without sleep. And in those flickers between chaos and stillness, he saw lightning in his mind. Two men, two different rhythms. but the same illusion, that stillness is real. It's not. It never was. It's only what we see when we stop looking. In Japanese Shintoism, stillness holds kama spirits, not nothingness depth. A quiet lake is not empty. It is alive beneath the surface. Stillness in that world is sacred, not absence presence. In Inuit tradition, night is when ancestors speak. When dreams carry messages from beyond, they believe the soul drifts in sleep. Not aimlessly, but with a purpose. So even if you lie motionless, your spirit might be walking. Elsewhere. Elsewhen. Stillness is not the end of motion. It's a shift in its direction, from external to internal, from outer to ancestral. And yet, in modern culture, we worship the visual pause. We crave blankness. We crave off switches. We think silence is a destination. But look closely. Even clocks never stop. They just tick more quietly at night. Ancient calendars followed the moon. Time pulse. It didn't march. Rest was a phase, not a halt. Part of a sacred cycle. Today, we break time into rectangles 9 to 5s, alarms, schedules. But deep within, you still carry a rhythm older than clocks. The sleep cycle itself is not a flat plane. It's a spiral. Light sleep, deep sleep, REM. Each night you descend and rise again. You travel, not outward, but inward. And that, too, is movement. Even if no one sees it, stillness is the illusion cast by a resting body over a working mind. Even meditation, our symbol of calm, is full of subtle awareness. You notice your breath, your pulse, your thoughts rising like clouds. Stillness becomes a way to watch motion without chasing it. Because even when you're quiet, you're alive. Even when you pause, you're processing. And when your thoughts drift at night, that's not failure. That's activity in disguise. The brain never turns off, not even in sleep, especially not in sleep. It rehearses, cleans, rearranges. It replays the day in reverse. It prepares the next one. It holds space for unresolved things. Stillness is a mirror, not because it reflects anything, but because it shows what moves behind the face. So when you lie in bed and feel your thoughts stir, you are experiencing the truth of rest. That it is never empty, only invisible, only misunderstood. You are not broken because your body is still, but your mind is not. You are alive, fully, deeply. Because stillness is not the absence of sound, but the quiet between pulses, the space where mystery lives. And if tonight you lie in the dark and feel the tide inside moving, that is not failure, that is repair, that is grace. You don't need to stop it, only soften beside it. Let it do its work. Let the mind wash. Let the heart loosen. Let the spirit speak. And if this chapter helped you rest more honestly, share it with someone who's still seeking stillness. Because maybe they're not stuck. Maybe they're just moving in a direction they can't see yet. You are here, in a room with walls, with doors that lock. But your mind is in a cave, listening for predators in the dark. You carry a phone, a schedule, a calendar full of future things, but your brain is still wired for the distant past. It doesn't know you're safe now. It still acts like the night is a threat. And that's not a mistake. That's biology. That's legacy. You are a modern soul driven by prehistoric fear. A nervous system built for danger, not dinner reservations. Your brain evolved to keep you alive, not to keep you calm. At night, when the world dims, the brain goes on watch. Because for most of human history, darkness meant risk, and vigilance was survival. You slept in forests. You slept in tribes. You slept lightly or not at all. Your amygdala still remembers. That almond-shaped alarm bell never got the memo about electricity. It scans the dark. It listens for absence. And when there's nothing, it invents something. This is why your thoughts race at bedtime. Why shadows become stories. Your mind is doing its job, protecting you from a world that doesn't exist anymore. This is evolutionary psychology. It explains why ancient instincts still steer modern minds. And it's not just fear, it's pattern recognition. The brain repeats what once worked. Your body sleeps in 2025, but your neural hardware is from 200,000 BCE. Stillness feels unsafe because stillness once meant you weren't listening closely enough. And if that sounds exhausting, you're right. It is. Even Charles Darwin wrote in his journal about night terrors and unexplainable fears. He believed in adaptation, in survival of the fittest. But even he couldn't explain the shadows in his sleep. His body evolved, but his dreams remained primal. And across time, others tried to name the same experience, not as science, but as spirit. In medieval Europe, nightmares were demons. Sleep was vulnerability. The soul was said to wander while the body rested, leaving you open to attack. Witches, spirits, night terrors, all blamed on the soul's absence during sleep. But in other cultures, the night was not feared, but revered. In Zulu cosmology, night is when the ancestors speak, when dreams are conversation. They say the soul moves between layers of existence and returns with lessons. Stillness was sacred, darkness divine, dreams a classroom. So which is it? Threat or message? Anxiety or connection? The truth may be both. Your ancient mind still watches for danger, but your deeper self seeks meaning. In it, you fear the dark, but you long for what it reveals. And so, the mind does both. It guards, and it wonders. This is the contradiction we carry inside us modern bodies, ancient maps. We crave peace, but are tuned for threat. And this mismatch creates friction. We want sleep, but the brain wants readiness. So it sends thought after thought. It replays the day, rehearses the next, reviews every possible outcome. Not because it's anxious, but because it's predictive, trying to stay one step ahead. This is the predictive brain model, the idea that the mind survives by guessing what comes next. And when the world goes quiet, your guesses get louder. Not because they're real, but because they're unchallenged. The silence of night removes input, and the brain fills the gap with what it knows best. Story. What if she didn't mean that? What if I forgot something? What if tomorrow breaks? These are not questions. They're survival rehearsals. Primitive instincts dressed as modern worry. And yet, they feel so personal, so emotional. Because thought is emotional. Always has been, even when it pretends to be logic. The nervous system can't tell the difference between emotional threat and physical danger. A heartbreak can trigger cortisol. A memory can tighten the chest. An email can feel like a lion's roar. And so you lie in bed, still in body, but in battle in the brain. This is not weakness. This is legacy, an inheritance of awareness. Even Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century mystic, spoke of visions that came in the night. She believed they were divine, but they began in physical unrest. She heard music, felt fire, saw light within the dark. Science would call it neural activity. She called it prophecy. Maybe it was both, because even now, in our modern world of alarms and medicine, the night remains mysterious. We've mapped the brain, but we haven't quieted it. And maybe we're not supposed to. Maybe these midnight messages are not glitches, but reminders that you are not fully separate from the animal you came from the ancestors who dreamt you here. You are evolution trying to slow down, trying to feel safe in stillness. You are the cave and the candle, the watchtower and the seeker. And tonight, when the thoughts come, don't fight them. Understand them. They are old friends with new voices. They are your survival reaching out in a world that no longer needs so much fear. They are proof that you still care about what happens next. So let them come. Let them pass. Let them teach. And if this chapter helped you soften your inner guard, maybe share it with someone who's still on night watch. Someone whose mind still sleeps with one eye open, just like yours used to. There's a part of you that wants everything to make sense, even the silence, especially the silence. Because silence, to the brain, feels like something is missing. The brain doesn't like gaps. It fills them with thought, even if the thoughts are wrong. And so you lie in bed filling in the spaces where calm should be. Why did she say that? What if I'm forgetting something? What's wrong with me? But maybe nothing's wrong. Maybe you're just resisting what the universe always drifts toward: disorder. There's a law for this, not emotional but scientific. It's called entropy. Entropy is the measure of how disordered a system becomes over time. From star systems to spilled milk, everything moves from order to chaos, including thought, including memory, including your life's narrative. You try to hold it all together. But the truth is, everything unravels eventually. That's not a tragedy. That's thermodynamics. Erwin Schrödinger, the father of quantum biology, called life negative entropy. He meant life is the act of resisting disorder, of building meaning against decay. And that's what your brain is doing. Every time it loops or obsesses, it's trying to organize the chaos. This is not madness. It's maintenance. It's the last light in the room, refusing to go out. Even your memories fade unevenly. Not because they're broken, but because entropy touches the mind too, and so your thoughts spin, repeat, rebuild. A desperate act of clarity inside a dissolving story. Alan Watts once said, "Noise is just sound we haven't understood yet." Maybe your thoughts are the same. Not chaos, but unrecognized meaning. Not disorder, but an unprocessed signal. And if you listen, not to fix, but to witness, you might hear something sacred underneath the mess. In Hindu cosmology, the universe is created, preserved and destroyed in cycles again and again. The god Shiva is not just a destroyer. He's the transformer, the one who clears the old for the new. Stillness isn't balance. It's recreation, born through chaos. In Maori tradition, the world began in darkness tepo, a womb of nothing. Out of that dark came light. Not suddenly, but slowly. Meaning is born from spaces we fear, from the disorder we try not to touch. And maybe your overthinking is not you falling apart, but preparing to begin again. Because the brain fears disorder, but the soul knows transformation begins there. This is why you try to find patterns in a memory you can't control. Why your mind runs in circles around the same three words. It's looking for anchors in a drifting sea. It's not neurotic. It's ancient. A torch against the wind. When your mind replays a moment, it's not because it wants to suffer. It wants to stabilize. It wants to assign meaning. Because meaning is the brain's version of gravity. It holds things together. Even time is more fluid than we think. Memories don't decay linearly. They fade in waves. Rise with music. Shatter under silence. This is emotional entropy, the slow diffusion of unexpressed feeling. And you, awake in bed, are the only one left to organize it? No one told us that sleep is a surrender. To meaninglessness. To silence. To drift. And yet, if we fight that surrender, we feel the tension of thought. But if we trust it, if we allow the disorder to pass through us, we wake lighter. The mind was not built to store everything. It was built to let go. But only after it understands. Even the earth doesn't fight winter. It lets the leaves fall. And maybe your thoughts are not failures, but falling leaves. Let them fall. Let them whisper. Let them go. Not because they're useless, but because their season has passed. You don't need to fix everything. You need to feel it. And then allow the entropy to do its work. We were never meant to hold it all together, only to hold it for a while. And now your system is recalibrating, your mind dissolving unnecessary shape. This is sacred disorder. This is the unraveling before the next weave. So don't be afraid of noise. Don't be afraid of forgetting. Don't be afraid of thought you don't understand. The system isn't breaking. It's resetting. The tide is turning. And in that tide, your deepest healing begins. Not in control, but in trust. If this chapter helped you surrender to the gentle unraveling, share it with someone who still fears their own noise. Because sometimes the most beautiful meaning comes after the structure collapses. You close your eyes, the room fades, and yet you don't disappear. You lie there, but something in you has already left. Where did you go? Where does thought drift when the body forgets itself? Is sleep a pause, a reset, or something far stranger? For centuries, we thought sleep was silence, an off switch, a nightly void. But science and something deeper suggest otherwise. Your brain isn't shutting down. It's shifting into a different operating system. Dreams rise, memories morph, and identity becomes smoke. Who are you when you're dreaming? A version? A visitor? A simulation? And where does consciousness go in the moments before dream? In the dark, just before light? These are questions quantum physics has begun to ask not just mystics. Roger Penrose, physicist and mathematician, believes consciousness begins at the I-FOW, quantum level. He proposed that inside your neurons are tiny structures called microtubules, and within those quantum activity may occur, collapsing probabilities into awareness. That means your consciousness might not just emerge from the brain, but from reality itself. This is not proven, but it's poetic and deeply haunting. Because if true, it means you are not just your body. You are the collapse of a possibility. Yourself is a flicker of probability made real by attention. So when you sleep and that attention softens, do you return to the wave? Do you dissolve back into the field of potential from which thought emerges? This is the frontier of quantum consciousness. Not settled science, but poetic suggestion. And it echoes older wisdoms, not from labs, but from land and spirit. In Aboriginal dream time, sleep is not unconscious. It is more real than waking. The dream world is the origin world, where ancestors walk and land remembers. They believe the soul travels through storylines carved long before your birth. Sleep isn't escape, it's return. Not the end of thought, but its home. In Sufi mysticism, sleep is the small death, a time when the veils thin, and what speaks through in that dark may be divine. The body rests, but the heart wanders, seeking the beloved in silence, and the beloved answers, not in voice, but in dream. In both science and spirit, we find the same. Suggestion: you don't disappear when you sleep. You shift into another frame, a parallel narrative. And maybe that's why your dreams feel symbolic, familiar but abstract, deep but slippery. Because they are shaped by memory, yes, but also by possibility. Even Schrödinger, the physicist who gave us the famous cat, believed identity was not fixed. He said the boundaries between self and other are illusions. That consciousness is singular, appearing to be divided. So when you dream, you might not just be you. You might be part of everything, and yet it feels so personal, so intensely yours. This is the paradox, that a universal field feels like a private story. That's what dreams are. Not nonsense, but metaphors of the self-dissolving. And the places you go, they might not exist, or they might be more real than this. This world has rules: gravity, time, cause, and effect. But in dream, your heart decides direction, and emotion rewrites logic. A room becomes a hallway. A memory becomes a landscape. A fear becomes a face. This isn't just randomness. It's associative logic, the brain linking emotion to image. Neuroscientists have seen REM sleep triggers intense visual activity in the occipital cortex. And even more, the prefrontal cortex, the logic center, dims during dream. Meaning, your dreams are emotional. Not analytical, not rational, just true feeling. That's why they linger. Not as facts, but as moods. You wake up not always remembering the scene, but remembering how it made you feel. Because your soul remembers feeling, not data, not plot. In these hours, your mind is painting with color instead of grammar. It is speaking in brush strokes and waves, and maybe even prayers. And when you wake, it feels like returning. As if you traveled, but forgot the ticket. You might say, I had the strangest dream. But what if it wasn't strange? What if it was sacred? What if it was your truest voice finally speaking without interruption? Because you are not just the waker. You are the sleeper, the dreamer, the field. Quantum physics says everything is entangled, that what affects one particle affects another instantly, even miles away. So maybe in dreams, you feel a sadness that isn't yours, or a joy that has no name, because you are connected. You are not one island. You are the ocean remembering itself. And when your brain lets go in dream, in stillness, in surrender, you drift into that shared sea. You become the poem instead of the poet, the image instead of the camera. And this, more than any theory, is what makes sleep so mysterious. It is death and birth, forgetfulness and remembering, ending and beginning. And maybe that's why we fear sleep even as we crave it. Because part of us knows we will return changed, softer, wider, quieter. And tonight, if your dreams come strange, welcome them, let them rearrange you. Let them show you what your waking mind avoids. Let them blur the boundaries of self. Let them remind you, you are not alone. You are the sleeper and the sleeper's song, the wave and the one who watches it crash. You are the quiet question the dream tries to answer without words. And if this chapter carried you a little deeper into mystery, share it with someone who's ready to meet themselves somewhere beyond waking. You wake up at 3 a.m. It feels like the night has lasted forever. But the clock disagrees. Or maybe it's the opposite. You lie down, and suddenly, it's morning. Time, at night, moves strangely, too fast, or not at all. And the more you notice it, the less sense it makes. As if time isn't a rule but a suggestion. This is not just sleep talking. It's science. And it's deeply human. Because the mind does not experience time equally. It stretches and compresses memory like fabric. When you're busy, time feels short. When you're still, it stretches. And at night, your stillness makes time open up. But it's not just perception. Your brain actually keeps time in its own mysterious way. You have no ticking gears inside, but your neurons pulse in rhythms. These internal rhythms are called neural oscillations, waves that count the invisible seconds. They regulate sleep cycles, heartbeat, attention, and even how long a moment feels. But here's the twist. They are not precise. Not like clocks, not like numbers. They are shaped by emotion, by focus, by memory. Your brain doesn't measure time. It feels it. And feeling is never exact. A minute in joy feels shorter than a minute in grief. This is subjective time. How your brain folds time based on meaning. St. Augustine, the philosopher from North Africa, once asked, "What is time?" He said, "If no one asks me, I know. If I try to explain, I do not." He lived in the 4th century, but his question still haunts physicists today, because time resists simple answers. And then came Albert Einstein, who changed everything. He proved time is not constant, it bends. His theory of relativity showed that time is slower near gravity and faster in motion. In space, a second isn't always a second. Clocks disagree across distance. So what is time? A river? A construct? A cage? In Mayan cosmology, time was a spiral, a wheel that turned through sacred cycles. Days had spirits, years had personalities. Time was a living being. In Taoist thought, time is like water flowing, yielding, impossible to hold. You don't control it. You move with it. You dissolve inside it. And your mind at night, that drifting voice, is moving through time differently. Because sleep alters time. Perception. You fall asleep for 2 hours, but dream a lifetime. This is REM time distortion. Your brain loses track of external rhythms. It starts to loop, wander, replay. Not in order, but in emotion. It stitches events not by timeline, but by impact, and so your memory of the day may not follow the clock at all. You might remember the pain first, then the silence, then the joy, because your brain organizes by meaning, by weight, by energy. This is why you often remember beginnings and endings but forget the middle. It's called the serial position effect. Your mind bookmarks moments at the edges of memory, The rest drifts into haze, soft noise in the background, and dreams. They play with that order. They remix time like a DJ of the soul. You meet someone from childhood, but they speak as if they're from the future, and you're your current self, until you're not. This is not madness. This is memory on its own terms. This is the mind in timeless space. Because your dream self is not bound by linear logic. It's not 12:05 or 2:17. It's before, it's between, and even waking thought can fall into this timelessness, especially at night, because at night your orientation collapses. No sun, no schedule, just mind. And in that collapse, time loses its mask. You begin to float. This is why the same 5 minutes can feel like 2 hours in the dark. It's not insomnia. It's time unmeasured, thought without structure. And maybe that's frightening, but it can also be freeing, a letting go, because the clock doesn't live in your chest. Only rhythm does. Your heart beats, but not to a second, to a feeling. And if you let yourself fall into that pulse, you will find peace in timelessness. Not everything must be tracked. Not every hour must be useful. Some time is sacred because it drifts. The ancients knew this, that some hours were for ritual, others for rest. Not all time was equal. Some was kairos, sacred time. Time outside measurement. Time for healing. Time for reflection. Time for simply being. Maybe that's what you enter at 1:37 a.m., staring at the ceiling. Not insomnia, but invitation. To witness the stretch of now. Because in truth, you don't live in hours. You live in moments. And the moment you realize time isn't real is the moment you become present. So let time lose its shape. Let your thoughts wander without needing a timestamp. Let the past blend into the now. Let the future become soft. Let the clock disappear. You don't need control. You need rhythm, breath, stillness, light. And if this chapter helped you loosen your grip on the ticking cage, share it with someone who measures too much and feels too little. Maybe we don't need to master time. Maybe we only need to remember how to float inside it. The lights go off, but the talking begins. Not from outside, from within. You hear it, that quiet voice, a whisper shaped like you. It doesn't yell. It doesn't always make sense. But it's there, echoing. Some call it overthinking. Others call it truth. But what if it's something else? What if it's your mind trying to remember itself? Because thought, when it loops back on itself, becomes something sacred. It becomes a mirror, not of your face, but of your being. This is metacognition, the ability to think about thought. It's rare in nature. Few creatures can reflect this way, but you can. And you do, especially at night. When the world is quiet, you become louder inside. And it's not madness. It's identity, trying to find shape. Inside your skull is a narrator you didn't hire, and yet, there it is telling stories while you lie still. This is inner monologue. It can be anxious? Sure. But it's also deeply human. It's the self looking at the self through the fog of awareness. Centuries ago, René Descartes sat with this voice, and from it he birthed the phrase, "I think, therefore I am." It sounds logical, but it came from a dark night of doubt. He stripped away belief, sensory certainty, even his own body, and still thought remained. so he called it proof. But is thought identity? Or is it shadow? Or both? Carl Jung would say, the voice you hear is part of the self you buried. He called it the shadow not evil, but forgotten. All the pieces you weren't allowed to be, all the feelings dismissed. At night, when the masks are off, that shadow returns. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to say, remember me? Because the mind stores not just facts, but abandoned versions of you. Old laughter, unspoken, fears, childhood grief in adult language. The voice isn't a stranger. It's you when no one's watching. That's why it can feel so honest, so sharp, so unbearable, but also so necessary. In Kabbalah, Jewish mystics believed truth whispered, not shouted. That divine insight came in silence, not in ceremony. You had to listen past the noise to hear your soul. And in Greek oracles, the cave wasn't a prison, it was clarity. They sat in darkness, near volcanic steam, listening inward. Prophecy wasn't about seeing forward. It was about hearing deeply. In Navajo tradition, night was sacred, a space for ancestors to speak, not through words but through inner knowing, a dream, a flicker, a feeling. Darkness wasn't danger, it was doorway to truth, and perhaps your nighttime. Thoughts are modern echoes of that ritual, because the brain does not sleep like the body. It drifts and returns. It sorts the day in emotional waves, not logic. And sometimes what rises isn't just thought. It's memory that never spoke. It's longing that didn't find words. It's the version of you that waited. Emily Dickinson wrote poems as if whispering to herself in the dark. Her room was silent, but her mind, it was galaxies deep. She wrote of fear like it was a visitor, of truth like it was fog. She knew some voices don't need a crowd, because the deepest conversations happen when no one is listening. And that's what happens when you lie in bed and the thoughts come. It's a conversation you've been postponing with yourself. Not all inner talk is anxious. Some of it is longing. Longing to be seen by you. Longing to matter again. The world tells you who to be, how to speak, how to act. But your night voice remembers who you were before all that. It's like a younger you trying to whisper past your armor, saying, don't forget the softness, don't forget the wonder. So let it speak, even if it rambles, even if it hurts, because maybe you don't need to silence it. Maybe you need to hold it like an old photograph, to say, I see you, and you still belong here. And in that gentle listening, healing begins. Not loudly, quietly, not in a fix, but in the presence, in patience, because the self doesn't demand answers. It needs a witness. You don't have to fix the voice. You only have to sit beside it. At night, you are both guests and host, and the mirror is not glass. It is thought, and thought is not always an enemy. Sometimes it's an invitation. So tonight, if the mind speaks, don't fight it. Let it tell its story. Let it cry, wonder, drift. Let it feel heard. Because when you listen to your own whisper, you start to remember your name. The name before expectation, before fear, before pretending. And maybe you'll fall asleep not fighting yourself, but reuniting. Because in the dark, your truest self comes home. And maybe that's the only voice worth losing sleep for. Sometimes the mind speaks, sometimes it sings, and sometimes it just breathes. There are thoughts that have no words, only wait. They arrive not as sentences, but as a hush in the chest. They don't explain. They don't argue. They simply exist, like a presence, and yet they're just as real as any conversation. This is the realm of silent cognition, of knowing that doesn't narrate. Not every insight wears language. Some wear stillness. It's how you feel when someone enters a room and something shifts. It's the way a memory stirs without saying a word. It's that ache in the chest you can't explain, but recognize. The science calls it nonverbal cognition, the brain's ability to know without speaking. Your nervous system feels patterns long before your logic arrives. It senses safety. It detects lies. It dances with meaning through tone and breath. Emotional intuition is not guesswork. It's ancient intelligence. Even in silence, your body listens. Your heart understands. You knew how to do this as a baby before words ever came. You cried. You laughed. You reached out. You read faces, tones, touch. And then we were taught to explain everything, to put words on wonder, to narrate the soul. But silence was never ignorance. It was fluency. The Tibetan masters knew this. In dream, yoga, silence is preparation, not emptiness, but clarity, a space where the spirit can echo. They believed that in silence, you see your own mind, without distortion, without interruption, just the raw, flickering screen of self. And it's not always peaceful, because silence reveals what noise hides. But it's always honest, and that's sacred. Laozi, in ancient China, said, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The moment we name it, we shape it. We reduce it. True wisdom," he said, "arrives like water, gentle, shapeless, patient, and silent." Silence doesn't mean absence. It means presence too full for words. And Rumi, the mystic poet, wrote, "Silence is the language of God." He meant that the sacred doesn't shout. It speaks in still moments and quiet griefs. It whispers through art, through heartbreak, through music. It moves like wind in the curtains not visible, but felt. In Navajo tradition, silence is not awkward. It is respectful. To be silent with another is to say, "I trust you." To let silence breathe is to let meaning rise like steam from hot stone. Western minds fear silence. We rush to fill it, to prove we are thinking. But what if thinking was deeper? When we pause, what if wisdom lives not in what is said, but in what is held? The brain, during silence, doesn't go blank. It shifts into a more reflective mode. The default mode network. This is where the mind wanders, integrates, where it sorts emotion from event, fear from memory, love from habit. Studies show that silence increases focus, that quiet heals, that the absence of sound lets the brain hear itself. Because thought is not just narration, it's presence, and presence is a kind of language all its own. You feel it when you hold someone's hand without saying a word. You feel it in the hush before music begins, or when a sunset renders the whole world speechless. Silence is not the lack of voice. It is the space where the truest voice lives. Even your breath speaks. It says, "I'm still here." Even your heartbeat carries rhythm. It says, "I'm alive. I'm alive." And sometimes, a sigh is the only language you need. Because silence, too, has dialects. There's the silence of grief, the silence of awe, the silence of love, too deep to speak. There's the silence between friends who no longer need to explain. The silence of looking in a mirror and finally not flinching. The silence of being exactly where you are. And in all of it, there is meaning. You just have to slow down to hear it. You don't need to always respond. You can just receive. Not all thoughts want an answer. Some just want witness. Not all emotions want fixing. Some just want permission to exist. And that is what silence offers. Permission. Tonight, if your mind is quiet, don't panic. It's not broken. It's listening. It's processing. It's holding space for something older than thought. The part of you that existed before language. The part that danced before it knew how to narrate its joy. That part is still here, still breathing. And when your words finally return, they'll be softer, more true, more rooted, because silence cleanses thought, like wind clearing fog. And sometimes, what you don't say is the most honest thing you've ever spoken. So let the silence tonight wrap around you like a warm sky. Let it hum. Let it echo. Let it wait. Because in silence, you remember. You belong. You are whole even without a single word. Especially without a single word. At night, the world disappears, but your mind begins. Eyes closed. Body still. And yet you travel. Where do thoughts go when you no longer steer them? What map do they follow? They rise like fog from memory, or sink like stones into the unknown? Some speak in symbols, others in echoes. All carry a message, wrapped in silence. Dreams, we're told, are the brain's recycling center. But what if there's something older, something sacred? What if your dreams are stories your soul tells itself? A myth written in sleep, decoded by feeling. The science says, during REM sleep, your brain lights up like a theater stage. The amygdala, keeper of emotion, fires like a storm. The hippocampus, guardian of memory, replays scenes with ghostly edits. And the prefrontal cortex, the voice of logic, goes dim. Just enough for magic. It's here, in this dream state, where fragments become forests, where a color from childhood bleeds into tomorrow's fear, where memory and imagination dance in disguise. Your dreams are not random. They're stitched from pieces you forgot you saved. Scientists call it memory consolidation. The mind is sorting. What matters? It's how a lesson is learned today becomes instinct tomorrow. But that doesn't explain the strange faces, the impossible skies. Why do we fly? Why do we fall? Why do we kiss strangers who know us? The answer lives beyond neurons in symbols, myths, and archetypes. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, a shared ocean beneath our waking thoughts. In dreams, we dip into it. We borrow its language. A snake is never just a snake. It's a transformation. A door is not just a door. It's a threshold. A storm is not chaos. It's your inner voice, demanding to be heard. Mary Shelley, barely 18, once dreamt of a man reanimated by lightning. She woke and wrote Frankenstein, a novel born from a dream's pulse. Her story, it wasn't just fiction. It was grief, science, and prophecy disguised. Dreams speak when we stop performing. They tell us what we hide. They're mirrors held at strange angles. not to distort but to reveal. Ancient civilizations believed this. Dreams were not dismissed. They were studied. In Egypt, there were temples for dreaming, sanctuaries where sleep meant revelation. Priests would guide dream incubation, seeking answers from the gods through symbols. The aboriginal dream time, the dream world, is older than waking reality. It is the source of all creation, where ancestors walk and spirits sing. There, a dream isn't an escape. It's return to the origin, to know beyond the mind. So what if your strange nighttime visions aren't confusion, but instruction? What if they're your inner self trying to make sense of a noisy world? We often ask, why did I dream that? As if it were a mistake. But your dreams don't speak in grammar. They speak in a grave tone. If something recurs, pay attention. It's not haunting you. It's holding you. A place you always visit. A person who never ages. A version of you you barely recognize. All are clues, echoes, reflections of what you won't name aloud. The dream is your brain practicing emotion in a theater without walls. It's safe there to weep without reason, to rage without hurting, to love without fear of ending. Your dream world is a sandbox for the soul's unfinished stories, and yet dreams aren't only emotional. They are deeply physical. Your brain's glymphatic system clears out toxins during deep sleep like a tide. So, while you drift through surreal landscapes, your biology is sweeping the floors, healing, restoring, resetting. No wonder dreams feel cleansing, because they are. Tonight, if you dream, notice the feeling, not just the scene. Did it soothe you? Startle you? Pull something hidden into light? That's the real language of dreaming. Not what happens, but how it happens to you. You may not remember them. That's okay. The dream still did its work. It whispered to the parts of you that never stopped listening. So when you wake feeling heavy or light, know that something happened in the dark. A lesson, a repair, a small act of self-rescue. And if you're lucky, you'll carry a glimmer of it into the day. A thought you don't understand, but can't forget. A feeling with no source, but a clear destination. That's your dream, leaving footprints on waking ground. Let them guide you, not like a map, but like a melody you follow by heart. And if you find yourself in pain, ask your dreams for clarity. They may not give answers, but they will offer a softer way to ask. And that, sometimes, is the beginning of peace. Because dreams are bridges between mind and body, between self and soul. They carry what can't be carried and reveal what won't be spoken. So tonight, when the world dims and the covers cradle your chest, close your eyes not to forget, but to remember deeper. Let your thoughts go where they need to. No leash, no judgment. They'll return in stranger forms, but truer ones, because in dreams we are closer to who we really are. And maybe, just maybe, that's the whole point of sleep. The sun forgets you when it falls, but the night remembers. It whispers your name before even you do. It holds it like an ember, soft, glowing, ancient. Because in the dark, you don't have to perform. You just are. No spotlight, no audience, just breath and memory. The world quiets, but something inside stirs awake. A flicker, a knowing, a name you haven't said in years. Not the one on your passport, the one your soul answers to. This is not fantasy. It's biology, wrapped in metaphor. At night, your melatonin rises, a chemical lullaby from the pineal gland. Your body cools. Your heart slows. Your mind loosens its grip. And something happens. Something measurable, but not quite explainable. You become more. You when no one is watching. Self-awareness, as studied in neuroscience, increases during rest. As if the mind uses stillness to gently hold up a mirror. What you see there is not filtered. It's raw. It's real. Even EEG scans show the brain remains active in soft, wandering ways during sleep. Especially during twilight sleep, the hypnagogic state, where thought turns to image. Here, you meet yourself without pretense. No resume, no mask, only memory and myth. Virginia Woolf called this space the strange region between sleep and waking, a place where consciousness blooms sideways. She wandered it often not to escape, but to feel more truthfully. Her writing was rhythm and echo, like waves brushing a forgotten shore. She believed the soul emerges in solitude. And what is night, if not solitude draped in stars? Søren Kierkegaard, the 19th century philosopher, once said, "The night is the time to be silent." But not because silence is empty. Because it's full of answers, too soft for daylight. He called it night, a teacher without words, one that teaches by reflection. The questions you ask before sleep are rarely for the mind. They're for something deeper, something waiting, something that you already know. In Celtic tradition, night is a passage between worlds, a veil thin as breath, between waking and the spirit. To sleep was not just to rest, but to travel.